Dr. Donald Baer and I are working together on a research project looking at how reading develops in individuals with chromosome variants. So we set up a website called anextrakiss.com where you can download first of all, the consent forms, because we can't even look at your child's spelling test without a consent form. You can see the goals of the study, and then you can, when we get from you their state tests, we can see how the school perceives them at their reading level, but when you send us their spelling test, we're able to see what we feel is actually their literacy development stage. Then this grew out of my master's thesis in literacy instruction, in which we polled people. Orthographic means spelling, so we were looking at the spelling development. We do have IRB approval to look at anyone with an extra X chromosome. We're going back and asking for approval to also include any sex chromosome variants so that we can look and see what patterns we see. This is what the talk covers. We do an overview of our work. It's too bad that I can't just present to you exactly what we found in the study. I feel like I have to go through the other part, explaining how reading, writing, and spelling develop together. Even though I know you're not planning on becoming reading teachers, for me to tell you that I can show where your son is reading by looking at his spelling, I need to give you that background. So I'm sorry if that is not as interesting to you as we get started, but I will keep that very brief as we go through it. Then we talk about how we assess it, how you intervene if you see that a child is needing more reading instruction, and then we do the 5 case studies. Please don't be offended that these are data from trisomy X girls. There are commonalities among all of the sex chromosome aneuploidies, and if you're willing to send in your spelling tests to us, you will see that a lot of the Kleinfelders and the Y boys probably have the same kind of things going on. All right, so this is hosted through the E.L. Cord Foundation Center for Learning and Literacy at the University of Nevada, Reno. And that center is designed for improving literacy instruction and for working with children there. Our study that I'm reporting from today has 15 cases. It is IRB approved. That should really mean something to you. Institution review boards really care about the reputation of the institution. They are not going to let a study go out that is detrimental to the participants in any way. This was not easy to get IRB approval. I am approved for any X chromosome, extra X chromosomes, so you can send that data in now, but I will get it for the Ys and let you know as soon as we have that. IRB approval is really important to have. Once you send me your child's spelling test, I will send you back a letter telling you what level of literacy that spelling test indicates. Then the letter tells you what reading instruction would fit at that level of literacy development. But I end the letter with a disclaimer. Your child is not coming to Reno to be assessed in our center where we can regulate what happened during that spelling test. This does not count as a diagnosis. It counts as an indication, and it can be used as an indication when you're meeting with the teachers or in the IEP meetings. But if you're saying that your child was diagnosed, we can't diagnose them. If they come to the center, we can test them and it's controlled, and we would be more willing to stand behind that. But it's really good information for you to have. We also give you a scope and sequence that you can share with the teacher. You can share with the special ed instructor, the tutor. If you're homeschooling, you can use this as a guide. If your child was at the letter name, these are the things that are going to be appropriate to be teaching them. And we also give you recommendations for books. Doesn't mean your child has to read this book. They need to be reading books at this level as they come through. We all know about RTI. It's the new special ed. RTI, most people start out on level 1. Of the 15 girls that we had data from, only 1 girl was at this level, and she has professional parents who keep her in tutoring even though she's not keeping a delay. And we've heard it from speaker after speaker that they respond well to one-on-one or small group instruction in a quiet environment. And that's what her parents are providing. So the fact that she's at level 1 does not mean that she necessarily wouldn't have delays if she didn't have parents that were supporting that with continual tutoring. Level 2, smaller group instruction, give them more time. This is what I had dreamed my trisomy daughter would be able to function with, but as instruction got harder, she wasn't, and we had to go to level 3, which is special education. The grouping is less than 1. Very important for you to understand, if your child is at tier 2, the aide can work with them in the small groups. Once they are at tier 3, it has to be a licensed professional giving them the instruction. So, who does not respond to intervention? Dr. Bear and I both like Frank Valentino. He did one-on-one instruction with 1,000 children and only 1.5 did not respond. Children respond to instruction. They will make gains, but that instruction has to be at their appropriate level. So now we have to assess their development. A deficit model means they aren't going to get it because they're missing something. And I have taught for 15 years, and I can name one person who had multiple diagnoses that I worried she might have a deficit. We still taught with the delay model, because when you go with the delay model, you don't need a bunch of fancy testing. You assess where they are and start instruction, which is very nice. Now, in order for me to convince you that I can help you find the proper level of instruction for your child by simply looking at their spelling test, I have to convince you that spelling actually relates to reading. And I know my husband is very good at being honest, and he said, I don't really care if our daughter can spell, I want her to function. And part of that functionality comes from an ability to read in this world, and reading is related to her spelling. And so I appreciated his candor, because I think that's a great focus for us to understand. Reading and spelling develop together to the point that over the last 30 years, Dr. Bear and his colleagues have established a world-recognized program that documents how, if you are an emergent speller, you are also an emergent reader. If you are spelling at a derivational level, the highest level, you are also an advanced reader and can have instruction there. The damage that can be done is if you assume that a child is reading higher than their spelling level, you will give them instruction that is too hard for them, and you will frustrate them. Yes?
I think my son is spelling better because memorization is one of his coping mechanisms of being a poor expressive language kid. So he's a great speller, and he's a modern reader. I think it's because of it.
Right. And for our girls, their memory is so hard to get through. Long term is great, but short term is bad. That will be very interesting to hear what you think when we get to the end, because even a good speller in this program has things they can work on.
Yes,
as they go through.
the word new,
But he could memorize how to do it. That's very interesting. So in this slide, if you look, oh, it's very fuzzy, so I'm not sure you can see this, but I can show you if they misspell the word float, F-L-O-T, then I go directly up. They are a letter name speller. We will predict, and it is accurate in research studies where they go for to show that this is reliable, that 70% of the time or better they are a beginning reader, because it correlates that directly. If you spell float, F-L-O-T, you are a beginning reader. You should be reading out loud. You should be reading single syllable words, and you will be moving on. If they spell it F-L-O-T-E, they are at a different stage. So when you go to anextrakiss.com and you download that spelling test, please don't go through it after they've taken it and put check marks and write -4 at the top. we're not marking right or wrong on this. We're looking for their development. If your daughter or son misspells all of those words, we can still learn from how they made that error. And all of these slides, by the way, are in a handout at genetic.org, so you can print these out to see them. When they get to the advanced level, that is where your derivational spellers are looking at the roots of words and root commonality. My favorite one in my classroom was when they got to the list where they learned that medicinal and medicine are related to each other, because they know how to spell medicine by the time they're in 6th grade. But to spell medicinal, they didn't know, because it wasn't a word that they had used much. But because it was a derivational study list, they could see that correlation. They learned to look for the word please in pleasure. Okay? Some children will get into high school without being in the derivational level. But to become an advanced reader where you can use reading as a tool, you need to get into that level of spelling. So we look at the levels, and this is important. If you look at what a child knows, then what they use but confuse, and what they leave out, you're going to find out that what they know is their independent level. You don't have to give them any instruction on something they already know. This is true for knitting, cooking, basketball, and reading. It's true for all instruction. You don't need instruction on what you know. If you get instruction at what you're using but confusing, if your tennis backhand is the problem, instruction on your forehand isn't going to help you. But if they're using but confusing the method for backhand and they get instruction for that, it's right where they need it. What they're leaving absent is too high. If a child is spelling bed, B-D, don't give them instruction on vowels. They're not ready for vowels yet. They need instruction on the consonants until they build up to where they're using but confusing vowels. So if they spell bed B-A-D, now you can give them instruction on vowels, because now they're using but confusing that. The spelling test that we used was Words Their Way, which is a developmental program. I am not a salesman for Words Their Way. Dr. Baer did develop the program. It's been in use. It is internationally recognized. You can take the spelling test that we give you and move it to any state. Move that in your child's school file to any state, and they will recognize it. Okay, so this is the program that we use. This book is on sale at bookstores. But the reason we used this spelling list instead of another is because it has been researched to be reliable in indicating level of spelling through using it. It's also really important to me that it's scripted. So when you download this, you don't make up your own sentence. You read the sentence that is here. I need you to do that because one of the things the girls did, and I don't know if the boys will do it, they did word substitution. She didn't know how to spell bright, so she put kite. Because she's racking her brain and she wants to please. I do know how to spell one word, she put it. For the word correspond, one of the girls at a higher level wrote the word honorable. Because we knew it was scripted, we were able to go back and look at all the sentences and see if she had actually spelled a word that was in a sentence anywhere around that word. She hadn't. She was just at overload. We had gotten to her frustration level, and she was overloaded, and she was just putting down what she thought would make us happy, because they want to please. So when you do this, the scripting is really important. They take the spelling test, and then we can look and give you not just your child is at the within word pattern. We can say it's early within word, so I would start with this part of instruction. Or it is late derivational relation. So it gives you a starting point. When they come to me and say, your daughter scored a 3.4 on the CRT testing, I don't know what instruction she needs. I don't know what's the difference between a 3.2 and a 3.4. Does she need this or does she need that? With this spelling evaluation, I can score her test and that day start giving her instruction that is at her instructional level. It's not too low and it's not too hard, and it gives me a step-by-step instruction for how to improve her reading, for how to improve her spelling. Yes?
Hi, so I have a words away, and there's a series, there's like 3 early reader, and there's like elementary, and then there's secondary. So how do you know if your child is in going into 7th grade, you suspect it might be lower? Did you take, and then once you grade it, you realize, or once you checked off, you realize they know all those, and you just go ahead and do the next level up?
Do you know what? When we score it, we start them wherever they miss 2 of the same concept. But when you do that with your son, if you see, well, he missed 1 here and 1 here, you can always do just a short lesson on those individual concepts as they go up. And I'm not sure that I answered that very well, so make sure we talk about it again as we go through. So we take the sort, as I just said, and we mark. We put a check, what they got right, what they got wrong. When they have 2 wrong, we start them at that level that they're at. Spelling is your most conservative measure of what a student knows. You knew this already without me showing you this regression line, because you knew intuitively that you can read words that you can't spell. But in the school district, they forget that, and they want to tell you to put your child at the instructional level that their reading is at. And many of the children have figured out how to compensate like crazy to do as well as they can on the reading program. They can't do a lot of compensation on spelling, but they can show us what level they're at by what errors they make. So this is an example of that regression line. A child could read 2-syllable words, but they're still spelling at the 1-syllable level. Where are you going to give them instruction? If you give them instruction at the 2-syllable word level, you're working at their frustration level. And I know that it's only part of it, but when the latest research came out about they're unhappy in school, when Otter did the review of literature on trisomy X, he said, well, in general, they're just unhappy in school. I know part of it's the social, I know part of it's the anxiety, but I also have a feeling the part of the anxiety is that they're being taught at their frustration level, not at their instructional level. And your spelling is what you can use to ask them to teach them at that level. Okay, so this is what teachers do. They put it into groups, and then they group the children by that developmental level. Then we have a concordance that you'll see on the handout. It's part of the handout that's at genetic.org. It will show you the concordance. If your child scores at this level, you can follow right across. They're reading at this level, and this is the kind of instruction that would benefit them. The spelling inventories are a great measure of development. Please don't take these and use them as spelling tests and teach them how to teach these words, because then we can't use them to look at their levels. But they will learn these words as they learn the patterns and develop up. But we use this in the classroom. I give it to my students in the fall, I give it to them in January, and I give it to them again in the spring, so that I can see that they are progressing. They may not jump from one level to another in a year, but they will progress as they go along. So this is an example of how they did that. Dr. Baer has used this all over the country and has had longitudinal studies over the last 30 years that show the children moving up spelling levels within a year. Okay, literacy instruction, you start with root. If you get a note back from us saying they are at a level that appears to be delayed, or you already know they're delayed, you know how to do this. This is what you've always done at home. You read to them, you read with them, you write with them, and the word study, and you talk with them. You're already doing this. In the classroom, they get 3 of these all the time. What we do at the center is we focus on the 2 that have asterisks. The two that have asterisks are the ones that oftentimes get overlooked. So we read with them where they do part of the reading. Don't ever ask my daughter to read to the whole class. But if you ask to read with her in a group of 2 or 3 or just one-on-one, she's with it. And she'll do it with you gladly. Okay, so you know to read to and to read with. You're right beside them. You've got the same text or you're reading along with them. You write with them, meaning you talk to them about the story. You help them if they're stuck on something. The word studies, this is what you find in the Words Their Way books, where they can do picture sorts. They can do word sorts as they move along. And word study is not just spelling, and spelling should not be take these words and memorize them and take a test on Friday and forget them. That's not going to help. It needs to be learn this pattern. Could, should, and would are in the same sort. Things with the same spelling pattern are together in the same sort, because then they don't memorize those 20 words. They get a sense for the pattern and they can apply it to other words. So it's not something that they just forget as they go along. These children are doing word sorts. I think the OT, I think Audrey would have approved of this. They cut the words out, they manipulate the words and move them, and then they write them, so that it's all really reinforced. Actually, I need to point this one out to you. Students learn more about reading from spelling than they learn about spelling from reading. I didn't know that. I thought that I could just keep my daughter reading and she would get it. If she saw that word 100 times, wouldn't she eventually spell it correctly? It doesn't transfer as easily as if I pull those words and I teach her about the spelling. It actually transfers into her reading. So we go through the stages. There are 5 stages, and I'm going to go really quickly because I think the part that's interesting is the case studies. We start as an emergent reader. We move into letter name, mat, sat, cat. We go into the within word. These are the ones that are the Wright brothers of reading. Hard to get off the ground, don't go very far, come down easily. Anything can bring them down. They can get stuck in this. This can become the black hole of reading. We have 7th and 8th graders at this level because they need a developmental program. It is not Words Their Way they need. They need any developmental program that works with them. Syllable affects, they start learning about, do you double the consonant or not when you're adding endings? Then the derivational, they learn about the morphology of the words. How did it begin? How does the Greek root relate to how it's spelled? That kind of thing. So we'll start with your emergent literacy. Love the 2-fisted simian grip. And then we go, this is writing with the emergent reader and the emergent speller. That is writing, and they will tell you what it says. Dr. Bear apologized when he put this slide in. He said, oh, I put that slide in upside down. This shows emergent writing so beautifully. Do you see how it started with squiggles, then it moved over and they started putting spaces between the squiggles, then they started replicating numbers and words as symbols, and by the bottom they put it in a linear flow. That's all emergent, but it's different levels of emergent. This is the spelling test. The first word this emergent speller put was bed. Is that alarming to us? Not at all. Bed, she got the final consonant. She's just at a very early stage. She got it. Ship, she's going well. Drive. I don't have the experience that Dr. Bear has, so when I saw J-I for drive, I was alarmed. He said, that is a perfect error because the articulatory gesture for DR is the same as J and G, and you will see as we go through the test, they do replace DR with J and G, and it is appropriate for their stage of development, which I was really excited about because I thought that was very nice. Okay, another thing, if I could redesign baby books, the OT would want you to have a baby book that says, when did they get pincher grass? because that's a huge developmental stage. For the reading teacher, we want to know at what age did they get concept of word? When did all those symbols on a page separate into individual words? And that's really important. They are not going to progress into a phonics level base until they get concept of word. Dr. Baer's been studying 58 kindergartners, and they found those children who could repeat a pattern can get concept of word. The ones who cannot do this are delayed in their concept of word, which to me as a teacher means I can get earlier intervention to that child. If I walked into a classroom without knowing that and said, you know, who all can do this, I wouldn't have known that that was an indication of who was going to need more time and more direct instruction in order to get it. So, concept of word, is extremely important, and if your child isn't there yet, try to write it down when they get it, because I think it's interesting. Emergent readers read books that rhyme, so 1, 2, buckle my shoe is very good. The teacher read this. The teacher had this little girl repeat it. When she walked up, she said, 1, 2, buckle my, because that's how we say it, buckle my shoe. She points to buckle and says, buckle my. So when she moves to the word my, she says shoe. Then she points to the word shoe and panics. Somebody changed the rhyme on her. She's not ready for phonics instruction. She doesn't have concept of word. She doesn't see that buckle, my are separate words yet. So now we're into the Trisomy X girls studies. These are the ones that were sent in to us. They simply send us a spelling test, any of their standardized test scores, and a parent survey that just says, do they have any problem with reading or writing? And this little girl came to us first grade level. She's not getting any language support. She has speech therapy for speech delays, but she's not getting extra instruction with reading because she's first grade. She'll get it. And then we looked at what she's doing on her spelling test, and she's got some delays that they can already see. She could begin getting language services now at first grade. And remember what Frank Valentino said? All but 1.5% respond. She's going to respond to the smaller instruction because she's going to get it earlier if we can convince them that the spelling test is already showing a delay. And this test is well enough recognized throughout the nation that they will respond to it, and you can use it. When she spelled gum, number 7, G-O-U-M, that's an anomaly. If she had spelled it G-O-M, that's pretty conventional spelling error. If she spelled it G-U-M, that would have been great. We have a little tiny suspicion that the sex chromosome aneuploidy kids have a uniqueness in their errors. And this is one of the errors that we were looking at. For a first grader to put an O-U in the middle was a little bit unique. So we want to get more data, if we can, to see if we can find what that uniqueness is and how it relates. Yes?
Most kids that have these issues with an X or not, do they have retention issues too? Because that 1, 2, buckle my shoe, I go over and over with my son. You know, they'll see the 3 words, buckle my shoe. And then last night we did milk in the bagger, and he couldn't see the book. You know, do you have that, like they can't retain what they just learned?
We are seeing, we see that with all children, like you said, and I wonder, if Dr. Baer was standing here, he would have a wonderful answer for you. All I can tell you is, it looks like if we continue to keep that instruction at their level, they eventually come through that. But I'm guessing she said buckle my for a lot longer. I don't think the teacher fixed that right then, and I don't think you're going to be able to see the concept of word applied. Even though he's got buckle my shoe, he's not going to apply it to everything yet as he goes through. So that's very interesting. This again is our first grader. As she goes through and she makes these errors, bad for bed is excellent. That's middle word of the letter name. It's middle letter name. And she's using but confusing vowels. Remember, you have to teach them what they're using but confusing, not what they're leaving out. So that was really important that she showed us that. But have you counted them yet? Do you see how many silent final E's we have? In the words, if they were spelled correctly, she would have spelled 4 words with a silent final E. She spelled 23 with silent final E. No teacher pulled a child over at this level and said, this is silent final E. It's what I refer to as incidental learning. She's in a classroom where somebody else was ready for it. She overheard it. She's smart enough to realize that that's what you do, so she's over-applying it. She's applying the silent final E rule. These children are not dumb. They are on the playground, they are in the classroom, and they are hearing things and they are going to apply them. You'll see it when we get to the 7th graders that they do the same thing. They apply rules, but they apply them inappropriately because they weren't ready for the instruction on that when they heard it. So we took her stages, we marked where she was, and then we encouraged the parents to establish a routine where she sorts things, she practices the words, she plays the games. These are all at her instructional level. Nothing above that letter name, okay? And these are all through the Words Their Way. I'm not selling it. This is a program that is developmental. Any developmental program, especially in a small group setting, because our children are shy, will be very effective for them. Abby is a 5th grader, and she needs assistance with literacy. She still has speech anomalies. If you're saying Christmas for Christmas, you're going to spell it with a P, because that's how you're saying it. So even at 5th grade, she's still got those anomalies. You can see she holds it together pretty good. What we would expect when you look at the spelling test, they start out with single-syllable words and they go to harder words. So we expect all of the 5th, 6th, and 7th graders to ace the first part of the test. They're not going to make errors to the end. Not true. Over and over, these girls made errors. Look at number 6. She's supposed to spell train. She leaves the R out and she doubles the N. This is another of the anomalies that looks like we're seeing something different than the rest of the population. And now you can see we got to her frustration level. She fell apart. She's a 5th grader, but when she goes to spell carries, she's just groping. And if you look at the last one, when she got to opposition, she didn't even have a P. Now I may misspell opposition, but I'm going to have a P in it. But she fell apart on us, and girl after girl here, you're going to see that they fall apart. This happens to be Abby's reading test score because we were able to get this. Her comprehension is on grade level. Her word attack, she's a 5th grader comprehending at a 5th grade level. So let's give her 5th grade materials. No, her word attack is at 2nd grade, 2.5. We have to keep her at her instructional level. So she took the national testing and she scored at grade level because they take all of these and they average them together. Her comprehension pulled it up. They came to her parents and they said, we want to end the reading support because she's now at grade level. Congratulate us, we fixed her. That's a writing sample. Do you think this 5th grader still needs reading, spelling, and writing support? If you are saying, go to grandma's in Oregon, up there we go to a rock garden that had peacocks, at 5th grade level, you're not going to be writing with your peers. So we were able to talk to the school and say, her reading comprehension is biasing that test. Look at her word attack scores. Look at her spelling test, which showed her at that point to still be at the letter name, so that she was able to maintain those services as she went on. She was at the center, and so we had earlier data. You can see the word couch, number 16, C-O-O-I. They didn't need to tell us on the parent survey that she had speech anomalies. We would have guessed it. because she was not applying phonics in any way. These are the kind of activities that you can use to reinforce it so that she will match man and cape. She sorts the pictures. If picture sort is too low for her, she can sort the words. If the word sort is something she can master, move her to the concept sort so that she understands consonant, vowel, consonant words have the short vowel sound, consonant, vowel, consonant, silent. E have the long vowel sound. And it walks her very, very gently up those steps to get to the higher level. And there's lots of games she can use to do that. We got to Caroline. She's at early syllable affects and she's 7th grade. We try at my school to have them at early syllable affect at 4th grade. So is she showing delays? I would suspect so. We look at her spelling. Remember I said it's developmentally designed. She should be acing all the way to the harder words. She is at 7th grade and misspelled lump and float. So even though she's at syllable affect, you might want to, as a parent or have a tutor or the reading specialist, just go back and touch on some of those earlier things that she missed, because it's like building a foundation. If you leave part of the bricks out, it's not a good idea. You need to help her with that. When she gets here and starts some of her misspellings, we didn't put a lot of weight on it because she was obviously at her frustration level. Once you're at your frustration level, you need to stop. This isn't working for her anymore. So she has difficulty with processing sounds and difficulty with nonsense words, and you can see why. She can't apply the phonics there. Robin is at the middle of the syllable affect. She's in 9th grade. She's been diagnosed with a learning disability. We move up through these fairly well till we get to number 11. I'm not an audiologist, and I don't have the language background that Dr. Baer has, but when I saw spoil spelled by a 9th grader with a B, I was alarmed. So I asked Dr. Lucker yesterday, I said, what do you think? And he said, that could be an indication of auditory processing, simply because they try to figure out, I hear the B sound, is it puh or buh? And she covered all bases by putting both in as she went through it. Okay, so we move on down. When you get to opposition, it's fine to be a 9th grader and misspell opposition, but we would have been a lot happier if she had misspelled opposition with an SH or anything that makes the sh sound. When she spelled opposition with an L, that was possibly one more of the anomalies that we're seeing, and we don't know what it's related to because we only have 16. We need to build the database, we need to do it over time and see if they continue to make errors that are different than the normal population are making. So she moves on through. She's doing dislocal for disloyal, so she's putting in words that she knows, but being very compliant. She wanted to do all 3 spelling tests. You only give 1 spelling test and move them down if it's too hard, move them up if it's too easy. She wanted to do them all. So the hardest one was a study of frustration for her. We talked about the transition stage being a black hole, that you need to keep giving them instructions, and these are some of the things that the school can do, fairly simple things to keep them moving forward. Your upper levels, that's right, and so we will show you the book sets at the end. They're $14 each, and they're bi-level, and they work them up 1 step at a time. At this stage, they're reading silently, and they're reading fluently, and they like to read silently because it is faster for them. This is the kind of instruction they're being given. They're starting to learn how to add the inflected endings. They're starting to figure out if they double things or not, and they learn the morphology as they move up. This child was really important in our study because her parents didn't wait for her to have a delay. They put her in tutoring, and they kept her in a very small group and one-on-one tutoring for a 3-year period. At this point, Jenny is spelling better than a lot of children we're seeing in the high schools. because she's had one-on-one leveled instruction at her level, and she's got it. She actually scored when they tested her. She was, I think her mom said in the survey, one of 4 that tested to be in the accelerated program when she enters high school. And she's got an extra X. And she had lots of reason for struggle, but they continued to work with her at her level as she moved along. So they do have word instruction still, and these are the books that we were talking about. These just have lists. They have the lists made up for you. You can buy the Words Their Way book and make up your own list. As long as they follow the rules, it's fine. I happen to be, I would call it lazy, you could call it conservative about where I spend my time. These lists are beautiful because they walk the children up step by step by step. They're $14 each. They're available anywhere that you want to get them. And this is what I use with my daughters because I know they're not going to cry when I say we have to work on spelling, because it's not at their frustration level. And that, my friends, is all that I had for you. So I'm ready for questions. Thank you so much for being so kind today. Yes. If you go to, she asked about the author, Donald Bear, Shane Templeton, both from the university. Just search for Dr. Donald Bear and it will come up with a lot of his writing. If you have older children, he also has Vocabulary Their Way continues to teach them these things, but they make up the word list so they're not baby words. Yes, Leah?
I'm planning on homeschooling this year, Adam, and what would be the perfect scenario for me to work with you? What would be the most ideal situation for me to get assistance from you?
Well, if you send in Adam's spelling test to us, we'll send that back to you, and then Dr. Bear and I both have our emails available, and you can contact us, and we will go back and forth. This program is extremely popular with homeschoolers.
Would it be better if I flew out and had him tested by you?
I can ask Dr. Bear if he wants you to do that. It is not necessary, but we are willing to do it because it is really important for us to see how he gets frustrated, what he says to himself as he does it. I don't want to make a promise for Dr. Bear because he's got a tight schedule, but I am guessing he would love it. Because time after time he says, we're missing out on seeing what they're doing when they make these errors. So that would be very nice. But like I said, we can also give you some really good information if you just go online too.
And then what is your fee for service if we're working with you throughout the whole year?
That's very interesting. My daughters go to the center, and what do they pay per semester? I think it's a couple of $100s through the semester, but they work with a graduate, or they work with an education student who works this program with them, and they go for 2 hours a night, 2 days a week. And for my daughters, it simply means they don't cry about doing it. They love to go to tutoring. You can see why. It's at their level, and it's fun for them. What you would want to do when you're doing distant, I don't know. And so I'm going to have to defer to Dr. Bear. On the slide you saw the literacy website. You can do that, or you can do bear@unr.edu. And I promise he would be very interested because he's very excited about this study. He sees it as a way to help a population to have this become a strength for them instead of an anchor. Yes?
Are these books at different levels, or do you need all 5 books to work on?
If your child is at the syllable affect level, I would only buy syllable affect and derivation. They're not going to need the earlier ones. But if you're working with a first grader, I would buy the whole set just because you know you're going to work up. Or you can buy them one at a time as you see how they move through it.
Well, I've got a high school who's doing exactly what you're talking about.
That's right. So you probably are only going to buy the syllable affect or the derivational, depending upon what level he's at. Okay? Thanks. I really appreciate you listening this morning.